It was the year 2. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 had finally received the PlayStation 1 game supported to the Sega Dreamcast.
Great Barrier Reef! Sparkle, sparkle.
And you know what that means. Enhanced ports! The ports being developed by Treyarch delivered improved graphics and animations as opposed to the PlayStation version. The ports were well received, with most referring to it as the definitive way to play these games. The madmen at Treyarch didn't stop there, they even went as far as to port the Spider-Man game Neversoft and Activision released the following year. The higher-ups at Activision were so impressed with their port that they bought Treyarch and gave them the opportunity to port the Neversoft game to the PlayStation 2. In the middle of development, Activision had signed a deal with Sony Columbia to make a game centered around the upcoming Spider-Man film. However, there was only one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail. The team behind the game was given an 18 months due date, so creating the game from scratch was way out of the question. They didn't even have an animation set to get an idea as what the studio even wanted the game to look like. They ended up using the comics and drawing books to jot down famous Spider-Man poses and transforming them into 3D models. And fortunately, Activision has given them access to the engine used in the Neversoft Spider-Man game, so they weren't completely lost in direction. Activision required the script to the movie, and the team behind the game was given around 2 hours locked in a room to study what was going on. They weren't allowed to bring anything in this room, but once they were done, they wrote down as much as they could to help pinpoint ideas that could be implemented in the game. There were storyboard after storyboard after storyboard as the cutscenes were beginning to be made. The PS2 is what they tested most of the game on, as they believe if it can run on the PS2, it can run on anything.
Whoa. Yeah. Wow.
Unfortunately, the game's scriptwriter was hired late, and since it's considered a waste of resources to do the cutscenes without voiceovers, the team decided to carry on with what they already had.
Hey.
Josh Keaton was chosen to play Peter Parker, but what about the supervillain? The goal was to come up with villains and gameplay that better suited the movie's plot. Shocker!
Powered up and ready to go.
Vulture!
Prepare to meet your maker.
Scorpion?
Will I destroy you? Yes, I will.
Kraven?
I am Kraven, the world's greatest.
And of course, the Green Goblin were the perfect fits for the role, since having characters like Venom wouldn't exactly make sense, and I believe would have taken away the Goblin spotlight anyway. Now in 2001, we finally got a trailer for the game's prototype. Here, we can see an animation with Vulture and Shocker, which were actually one of the earliest pieces of animations that was made before the game even started production. But not only that, as we finally get to see Spider-Man in action. Notice how the compass here looks very similar to the one in the Neversoft game, and I'm not sure if it's just me, but the Spidey's icon kind of looks like the moving X-Men Legends icon.
I've planted electromagnetic pulse emitters throughout downtown. When they go off, every electronic device in the city will be destroyed. This city will come to a grinding halt.
When E3 rolled around, the game was in its beta stage. Treyarch showed off 2 levels. One with Spider-Man avoiding helicopters while disabling transmitters, and another with Spider-Man battling the Vulture. I find it interesting that if you manage to get a game over, the Daily Bugle calls you out on your failures, and you're smacked right on the front page. They're laughing at you. This was also around the time that Activision and Sony Columbia had finally approved of the game's script, and even gave them the opportunity to use Tobey Maguire, Willem Dafoe.
Hey, you asleep yet?
No.
Just checking.
And Bruce Campbell as voiceovers for the game, replacing Josh Keaton's Spider-Man and all the other established voiceovers.
I don't feel so good.
But don't feel too bad for him. They didn't get James Franco to voice over Harry Osborn in the game, so Keaton took over the role. Plus, the big-name actors couldn't always show up at the studio to record new lines, so to iron out any issues, the crew members themselves would record those lines to get an idea of what the cutscenes might sound like. And speaking of sound,
Who's ready for some música?
the music in this game wanted to stay true to the themes and qualities that the film had, but they also had an ace up their sleeve. They hired
Michael McQuistion
to get the perfect vibe, and boy, when the music hits just right, these hills sing. Michael made some of the songs for a lot of DC shows back in the 90s, including one of my favorite shows of all time, Batman Beyond. And I'm not biased, these songs are just straight up fire. Within the month of the game's development, the crew became closer and closer. Although they started small, over time, there were 30 full-time developers and 20 part-time developers. However, one of the crew members took one good look at what was already done and said,
"What the hell is this?"
Jamie Fishbaum didn't think the web slinging looked cool. He believed that the Neversoft game felt more like Spider-Man than this game did. It wasn't even swinging, it was basically flying.
Oh, thank you.
That wasn't flying! That was flying!
Locking himself in his office that night, Jamie spent weeks prototyping what he thought would give us the ultimate Spider-Man experience.
This is the Xbox, and so for the first time, let me now unveil Xbox.
Following the release of the Xbox, some cross-platform games came out with a few additional content or graphical improvements to help distinguish themselves from the PS2 and GameCube versions of games. And Spider-Man followed this trend. It was decided that the Kraven levels would be Xbox exclusive, while the rest of us suffered because we couldn't even play those levels. Luckily, most developers realized that this was just too much work to make little changes to their games, so they stopped doing this around 2004. In early September, a half-finished level allowed players to rescue civilians from a burning building. These were removed from the final game to not appear in bad taste, especially after the September 11th tragedies. One thing I found in the game's files was audio regarding character descriptions. Josh Keaton surprisingly had recorded a lot for Spidey than I originally thought.
Apparently Shocker's real name is Herman Schulz. He built those shock blast gauntlets to open safes, I guess. All I know is my bones are still rattling. He is so gonna end up with carpal tunnel syndrome, though. Mary Jane. I'm just gonna sit here and stare for a while, don't mind me. My Aunt May helped raise me after my parents died. She's the closest thing to a mother I've ever known. I know she still misses Uncle Ben, but she's a tough lady. She doesn't let anything stop her for long.
These character bios must be far in development, as Tobey Maguire even recorded the same lines.
The boss, the big cheese, the main man. JJ is publisher of the Daily Bugle. He hates Spider-Man for some reason, and he isn't exactly the most generous guy I ever met, but I suppose I could do worse for a boss, like maybe Ebenezer Scrooge. I don't like to talk about it, but every time I find a guy in trouble, I see my uncle's face.
There was even a working multiplayer build of the game that was cut due to it not being fully tested for bugs and glitches. Speaking of bugs, there are over 16,000 bugs found within all versions of the game. To reach the game's due date, the team had to remove many planned features due to the bugs attached to them, including our beloved multiplayer feature. I hope one day we get to see you. This was a sacrifice that I'm sure they had no choice but to make. Working up into the game's release, they found so many problems with the game, but fortunately nothing too game-breaking. I found this though, but it managed to fix itself, so it's fine. This is fine.
One of the coolest things about being a superhero is how easy it is to catch a ride. Be Spider-Man. Play the game.
Spider-Man was released on April 16, 2002 on the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, Xbox, and PC. To help promote the game, Kellogg's and the Got Milk Fellas mailed you this CD if you mailed them proof of purchase of 2 Kellogg's products and 2 gallons of milk.
I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these
The CD was actually made in 2001, but it came out around this time to help promote the serial. Pop in this bad boy into your computer to get this pretty cool intro with some of the villains we might see in the game. It also came with promotional content for both the movie and the game. And speaking of games, this CD-ROM definitely came with one. Alright, let's see what we got here. What? What the? This is just a Neversoft game with the Raimi suit modded on it. And the worst part is, it's not even the full game. It just ends after the Rhino fight.
We paid $9 for this?
I paid 10.
Well, that was a total letdown. Screw that. Let's go play the real movie game. The game's story loosely tells the story of the movie, but with a small twist. You see, the devs only had one of the earliest scripts of the movie to go off of. Most of the things, like the ending, weren't even in the final script. But lucky for us, it's a movie game, so who cares? Those usually never follow the movies completely anyway. Ooh, check this out. We even got this little tutorial with Bruce Campbell. Man, this guy is funny. Everything he says in the tutorial will have you rolling.
Hello, I'm Bruce Campbell, and I can't start my day without waxing my morning wood.
I think I got the wrong copy of this game. Anyways, the game begins with Peter Parker wanting to earn some money because, well, his aunt and uncle never had enough of it. Gaining spider-like powers was supposed to make this all too easy. After getting in an argument with his Uncle Ben, Peter takes out his frustrations in a wrestling ring. Even though he won the match, the fight promoter won't cough up Peter's hard-earned cash. So when said fight promoter gets robbed, Peter just lets the robber get away. After that, Peter finds out that his Uncle Ben has been murdered. And the police point their fingers at the Skull Gang. Not to be confused with the Skrulls. That's a story for another time. Peter, determined to track down the Skull's leader, interrogates the Skull members to find out where he can find them. Some of them are found on top of rooftops. And just by looking at the gameplay so far, the similarities and differences to the Neversoft game are like night and day. The combat's very similar, but comes with a few additional new moves, and this time, you have a lot more freedom with web slinging. However, for some reason, using web attacks makes this blue bar go down. This was an interesting choice, since the movie already has organic webbing. But you know, it kinda makes sense, since one of the early scripts of the movie had Peter using web shooters. This was probably something the devs didn't think they had to change. Oh man, and the sound effects that come out these gang members' mouths are hilarious.
Looks like the freak wants to play. How you like me?
I love them so much, they're so iconic. There's even this side mission with this lady who's getting ganged up on. After you save her, you get this hilarious sequence where she asks you to help find her purse, which is actually spotted on a different rooftop. She's apparently taking tours on different city rooftops, which is so weird and so funny. After you give her her purse, Spidey tells her to go home, which is a shame because she doesn't appear later in the game. She's so weird, but I feel like a couple more shenanigans. This lady wouldn't hurt anybody. To get back on track, Peter finds a dude that, well, actually, I don't know what he tells him. Just listen to this cutscene and you let me know if you can decipher any of this.
What makes you think I won't?
Ah! No! No, you want to spike. He's probably in that whole shipping warehouse. It's right on the river. That's all I know.
Thanks.
Ah, thank you, Tex. What would we do without you? Anyways.
Sounds like the police are closing in. They can have whatever's left after I'm done.
Peter goes off to a warehouse which seems to be where his Uncle Ben's killer's hiding. In the second level, Peter uses the shadows to progress through the warehouse, which doesn't really go out too well. The stealth is actually pretty awkward in this game. More on that later. Once he finds him, Peter then decides to scare him away before he can even catch him.
You could have taken that guy apart.
The killer gets away into a room, but now Peter has to go after this one guy who took the fuse off the door's control panel. After going through some vents like a maze, Peter eventually beats up the bully, fixes the control panel, and continues after his man like he's Dennis from Spongebob.
Come on, kid, give it up. Dennis always gets his man.
After exploring more of the warehouse and fighting a horde of goons, seriously, if you're playing superhero mode, this could take forever. Peter eventually finds the man responsible for killing his uncle. As it turns out, this guy was actually the same goober that robbed the fight promoter.
What a twist!
The guy trips on his own 2 feet for some reason, and he's now killed.
These are the years when a man becomes the man he's going to be for the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into. You're feeling this power of becoming a man, and with this great power comes great responsibility.
Feeling guilty about what happened, Peter Parker takes his uncle's advice and uses his power to fight any evildoer that might be lurking in New York City. Now, as the superhero Spider-Man, Peter gets a job with the Daily Bugle and decides to earn money by taking pictures of himself. But, not those kind of pictures.
Meanwhile,
within the walls of a company known as Oscorp, the CEO, Norman Osborn, and his team of scientists are given a week to make a super soldier serum that Spider-Man's abilities seem to mirror. With an analysis on his blood, they can make the perfect serum. But instead of asking nicely, they send out robots to track out Spider-Man in hopes of capturing him. As they set the robots up, Peter's taking photos for his Spidey OnlyFans.
This is disgusting!
As soon as he's done, however, some of the robots find him. They attack him, and Spidey's given no choice but to fight back. Hey, wait a second. What's that sky rating say? Chaos?
Chaos? Where?
Going back to the Bugle to get his rent paid, Spidey notices something very suspicious around a jewelry store. Notorious villains Shocker and Vulture both flee the scene separately, and Spider-Man chooses to go after Shocker first. Shocker and his goons take hostages in the Grand Central Station, and even the police try to help Spidey.
Don't panic, boys. It was only a matter of time before we had to deal with Spider-Man. Let's take care of security and get some hostages.
We've got a situation here. We need backup.
Backup is on the way.
Don't know who this creep is, but he's easy to follow.
After that, Spidey chases Shocker through the sewers.
It's time to stop that freak. Vic, make it happen!
I'm on it.
You shitting me?
No, that doesn't really happen. Spidey confronts Shocker at a subway station. And now, here's the part where you're supposed to dodge all of Shocker's blasts, but jeez, the amount of times I died here.
Come on, freak. You need to learn a lesson, and Shocker's School of Hard Knocks is now open.
Give me a break, Shock. I can't believe you have any class, let alone a whole school worth.
Nothing but a red smear and a memory.
Do those gloves have a puree?
I'm gonna shut your mouth for you.
Fucking compete! I just can't fucking compete!
After that, you finally fight Shocker until he straight up snitches on Vulture just cuz.
Oh, if I don't get mine, Vulture isn't getting his.
Apparently, Vulture has a whole hideout in an old clock tower. I kinda wish Spidey swung to the top of the clock tower in this cutscene, cause if you think you can easily speedrun this level, Vulture might have something to say about it. Unless you are a speedrunner, then keep up the good work, of course. Vulture will escape as soon as he's found, and Spidey follows him around the city, cleaning up every mess he makes. Deciding he's finally done cleaning, Spidey takes him on.
Come on, strike me down, dude. You don't have the ball.
After that, Vulture's webbed up for the police.
Nope, stop talking, go to jail.
Now for the most interesting story in the game, Osborn scientists find something incredible. There are now 2 species that have arachnid DNA. And without hesitation, Norman sends spider-like robots to force the targets in the same location so he can capture them easily. And as planned, the robots chase Scorpion in the sewers, below Peter. As Peter was about to take photos of the subway station repairs following his fight with the Shocker, the elevator stops and he senses danger. Scorpion and Spider-Man team up and destroy the robots together. After that, a paranoid Scorpion is convinced Spider-Man is also out to get him, so he attacks him out of self-defense. The two fight until Scorpion is seemingly knocked over. Spidey notices one of the spider robots and questions where all the robots are coming from, and who's really out to get him. Scorpion then leaves loudly. Like, come on, how did you not know he had just gone up? You can even hear his footsteps.
After me. Scorpion? Disappeared.
Spidey then questions whether or not he'll see him again. He's not brought up for the rest of the game, which is kind of a shame. Compared to the other supervillains, his backstory was actually pretty interesting, and I wish they explored it a little bit more. It just raises a lot of questions on my part. Unfortunately for Norman, he is fired for not making the serum in time, and decides to test what they already had on himself.
The board can't fire me! I built this company! How dare they! I'll teach them a lesson they won't forget.
This goes completely 180 as the serum creates an alternate personality known as the Green Goblin. Now with all the weapons from Oscorp, the Goblin uses it to get revenge on those who did him dirty. Explosions go off as Peter suits up, which for some reason took all the way until nighttime to do something. I guess Peter got distracted somewhere. I don't know.
It's never easy, is it? Who are you? No, wait. Let me guess. The Emerald Elf?
Me? I'm just a concerned citizen helping to clean up our fair city.
Mary Jane is trapped in this balloon, and Spidey goes to save her. After that, she rewards him with a kiss. Spidey also lets these people straight up die.
Problem. Grab hold of a rogue balloon anytime. Rescuing damsels is my specialty.
Without them knowing, one of the spider robots are actually recording them for one of those paparazzi YouTube channels. Seriously, these are real people. Leave them alone. Spider-Man goes after the Goblin until the Goblin gives him a choice. They can work together or forever be enemies. Spidey agrees, and the two create mass genocide around the world. If you actually believe that, then
you're a fucking idiot.
Spidey actually goes against his offer, and then the Goblin reveals that he has
bombs
scattered throughout the city. Spidey decides to stop the bombs, and when he does that, he... In the Xbox version, all this comes to a complete stop, as Norman hires Kraven to take down Spider-Man. Kraven declines his money and decides to hunt the spider down just for the thrill of it. Kraven lures Spidey to a zoo and poisons him. Now he has to get the antidote while going through traps and avoiding Kraven's sniping skills. This man will shoot you, even if you're hiding behind something. Why? You're wasting bullets. The two eventually fight, and Kraven gives him the antidote out of respect, but does not tell him about Norman. Spidey then leaves Kraven for the police. And I'd like to point a few things out real quick. Most of these files for these levels exist in different versions of the game.
Kraven claims to be the world's greatest big game hunter. I don't know what I did to get on his bad side, but Kraven got it into his crazy head to hunt me. I have to admire his fashion sense, though. It takes guts to go out in public wearing leopard print tights. That should be between you and your therapist, Kraven.
And the Xbox version is technically the only time we actually see Jameson.
Dude, getting me pictures of this.
But I just...
Doesn't anyone do his job around here? It's right out my window. I could write the copy myself.
Heck, even the storyboard suggests that we were going to see Betty Brant. After all these years, I'm very surprised that there are no mods to bring these levels back. I hope one day they'll show up, but as of this recording, it doesn't seem like there's any plans for it. Please someone prove me wrong. Well, in the meantime, we still got the GBA version of Kraven, but it just doesn't feel the same.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Okay, no more distractions. I have to find that Green Goblin creep and stop whatever it is he's cooking up.
Congratulations, Spider-Man! Dealing with you just moved to the top of my to-do list. Looking for me, boy? Well, here I am!
Spidey gets ambushed by a bunch of razor bats. He fights them till he can't no more, and swings away to find a place to retreat. There's also a UFO in this level. Just don't think about it, it'll drive you crazy.
Flying saucers.
After that, Spidey studies a piece of goblin gear that fell during the battle. He realizes the tech is from Oscorp and questions what's the goblin's connection with the company. He sneaks into Oscorp to find some answers. At the same time, Norman notices the photo of Mary Jane kissing Spider-Man that one of his robots took earlier. He then suits up to go after her to get Spider-Man's attention. Now this is the most nerve-wracking levels in this game. Never, ever get caught, or you'll have to deal with the super soldiers. I'm getting PTSD. These guys used to scare me to death. They won't even let you breathe if you get spotted. And the worst part is, you gotta do this for 2 whole levels. One of them consists of collecting codes to open a door, and the other is stopping these chemical weapons. After you stop the chemical weapons, Spidey finds himself in a large room with this giant robot. Here you have to take care of these generators to get to the robot's weak point. The robot also has this giant laser that's so strong, it lags the game. After that nightmare, Spidey finally makes it to Norman's office, where he finds the pics of Mary Jane. Wait a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
But you can't do this to me.
You know how much I sacrificed?
Hey, Buckethead, over here.
He swings by to get her, but realizes the Goblin got to her first. Now Spidey chases all around the city until Goblin goes to the Queensboro Bridge and leaves MJ to die. Spidey saves her, and then goes after the Goblin for the final time. This fight is unique as Goblin's glider also goes after you. The other Goblin's fights don't really do this.
Give him to me!
Soon after, Norman unmasks himself and just like the movie, kinda, overlooks Spider-Man's spider senses. The game ends with Mary Jane and Peter kissing. If you can call it kissing, she didn't really lift up the mask, over Norman's dead body. And I don't think anyone's looking like they're trying to stop that fire. Help! Help! all for this game, as it comes with a plethora of content. You got some cheats that allow you to skin swap between characters, such as Shocker, a police officer, a scientist, a helicopter pilot, one of a goblin's test suits, which is the same one from the movie. There's also various thugs, including Uncle Ben's killer, and my personal favorite, Mary Jane, who, if you got a later copy of the game, you couldn't play as her because of stuff like this.
You don't have to say.
Yes.
There's also a first-person point of view code, a matrix fighting code, and a shrink and grow your body code that you can even apply to the bad guys. But wait, there's more! The game has a secret store that can unlock a few goodies such as the wrestler outfit from the beginning of the game, play as Peter Parker from the tutorial level, unlock a bowling minigame with the devs in the back, and the 2 early Shocker and Vulture movies I mentioned earlier. There was also the Alex Ross costume, which is an early concept suit for the movie. Wearing it also affects the Green Goblin. And speaking of Green Goblin, this is probably the best thing from the secret store. If you manage to beat the game under hero or superhero mode, which I chose superhero mode because I'm crazy, you can play as the Green Goblin. He's not a skin swap either. He comes with a unique moveset and an alternate story, kinda like What If mode in the Neversoft game. Harry Osborn wants to clear his family's name using the Goblin suit. However, there is also another Goblin flying around causing trouble who tells Harry he was hired by his father to take out Spider-Man. Most of Josh Keaton's previous lines came over in this mode, and the levels are relatively the same. I never liked how at the end of this mode, there's no conclusion, there's a straight jump to the credits. This left Kid me in tons of suspense. You know, despite the game's flaws, this game was considered to be one of the greatest Spider-Man games at its time, with over 2 million copies sold. I think that's pretty impressive for a game that was made in 18 months. And with the Spider-Man movie knocking it out the park in the box office, Sam Raimi would be insane not to make a sequel. But what about another movie game? Could they possibly make a game that would fail? Or bring us the greatest Spider-Man game of all time? Only time could tell. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what you see, consider hitting that like button. And if you're feeling really generous, consider smashing that subscribe button. With consent, of course. It's really up to you. And I'll see you guys next time.